I'd like to introduce our newest sponsor, Swim Angelfish. Swim Angelfish is an online certification program that strengthens your teaching curriculum to serve swimmers of all abilities. Swim Angelfish will prepare you and your instructors with the skills to teach swimmers with autism, physical disabilities, anxiety, sensory and motor conditions, and more. Learn to teach skills faster and with more comfort with Swim Angelfish. Apply for an Only Alpha Pool Product Scholarship and receive up to 50% off your certification. Go to swimangelfish.com today to apply. Looking to host your first swim meet or replacing an old timing system? Run a swim meet with ease from your laptop using Superior Swim Timing. You can use Superior Swim Timing with your existing equipment, or they can provide you with a complete timing solution, including deck harnesses, buttons, and starter. SST is fully compatible with Hy-Tek and Team Unify, as well as Colorado, Daktronics, and Amiga touchpads. Go to superiorswimtiming.com to learn more, and be sure to tell them I sent you. I'm giving away not one, but two Swimnerd pace clocks on the first night of U.S. Olympic trials. Find the link in the show notes to enter. All right, John Lohn, welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you?
I'm doing great, Brett. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, you are the associate editor-in-chief at Swimming World magazine, correct?
That's correct. I've been with Swimming World in some capacity since 2000. Took a little hiatus over to Swim Vortex with Craig Lord there for a little bit. And but Swimming World gave me my start 21 years ago, and just fell in love with the sport from that day.
Yeah, if anybody's read anything about swimming in the past 20 years, they've certainly read your articles, and so it's nice to put a face to the name and to the words. And I've seen a bunch of your interviews before, but I appreciate you doing this today. Thanks for that.
No, I appreciate you having me. I mean, I've enjoyed all this and hearing just from the different athletes, and it's neat to see you bring it in this context where mine usually is with the words. I like to see it. I like it in the interview. Approach is great.
Yeah, Swimming World and yourself, you've been fantastic supporters of this and putting out articles based on the podcast itself. So I really appreciate that and getting the word out there. It's nice to be supported. And look, I think you have the same intentions as I have. I love swimming. I want to promote the sport. I want to get it out there. And you guys have been certainly fantastic in supporting that. So thank you very much.
It's been a great partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, how did you then get into swimming? Like what's the background here?
Yeah, my introduction to the sport is a little unconventional in terms of that I never swam. I regret it to this day, and I know I could probably hop in and get into the masters world, but I was a local newspaper reporter during college, and they just a small town newspaper, and said, hey, you're going to cover the swimming beat for the winter, high school. And I'm thinking, all right. And basically they were giving me what nobody wanted. And
where is this?
I walk into Upper Darby High School pool. So this is in southeastern Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And I see this kid win the 100 breaststroke by about a length. And I'm thinking to myself, I know enough about sports that's not normal. Well, the kid's Brendan Hansen. So I had to get up to speed in a hurry. And at the time, Brendan was a sophomore in high school. And we had two guys also in the area, Eugene Boats, who went on to race for South Africa in the 2004 Olympics, and a guy named Mike Grube. And Mike Grube was the second fastest high school sprinter that year behind Anthony Irvin. So I had to get up to speed in a hurry, and I didn't want to screw this up. I wanted to prove myself at the paper, but I knew there was something unique about these guys right there. And so, yeah, I started doing my research and, learned about those guys. And then I started pitching some ideas to Swimming World. They shot me down a few times. I tried to get an article on Brendan. They said, nah, it's not time for that yet. I did it again. They said, not right now. And the third time around, they said, okay, how about you do a piece on some up-and-coming breaststrokers? This is 2000, probably the spring of 2000. And they said, why don't you do something on Ed Moses, Kyle Salyards, Kristen Woodring, Brendan Hansen, Dave Deniston, Pat Calhoun. And the cover story was Megan Kwan, which somebody else was handling. And then I was doing the supplemental piece to it. And they liked the article. They came back to me a couple months later and said, you want to do something on the Curl Burke Swim Club, do a feature. And one thing led to another, and here we are 21 years later. I absolutely fell in love with the sport and became a sponge. But that's pretty much the story of that. I lucked out.
Wow, that's super cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Now, you must have a pretty close relationship with Brendan Hansen then. He was kind of the first guy that introduced you to the sport.
Yeah, the really nice thing about that was, Brendan just gave a lot of his time to me and the family. His dad, Buzz, his mom, Miriam, like we became really close as a group. His parents were at my wedding, just good people. And I'll never forget that Buzz took me aside a couple times and would just give me, some pointers, some information, just getting me more knowledgeable about the sport. They always had the time. And then Brendan and I grew together, him as this up and coming, future 6-time Olympic medalist, and me as a journalist. And I owe a lot to him for kind of taking me along on a ride. I went out to the 2000 Olympic trials just to cover him, and Maddie Crippen was at Villanova University, so I was covering the two of them. Well, the first night, and I had to really sell this, Brett, to get out there. A local newspaper. We didn't have a ton of money to get out there, to spend. And they're like, well, do you really think either of them could make it? And I said, I'm promising you one of them makes it. So the first night, Maddie Crippen finishes second to Caitlin Sandino in the 400 medley, and she punches her ticket to Sydney. And I'm thinking, I sold it. I'm in good shape now. And then Brendan has 2 third-place finishes as a recently graduated high school senior. And it made the whole thing really work. And then I was able to convince them to go to Long Beach 4 years later. And then, I've been pretty much everywhere since then.
It's pretty cool that Brendan went on to be one of the legends of the sport too, and especially
about
in the US.
Yeah, and when I saw him in, this is this little dingy, when I mean dingy, it was a dump where I saw him at Upper Darby. They've redone their pool now. It looks great. But this place was, first of all, and I'm this moron who walks in there with long sleeves on. It's like 100. It's 100 in there. There was no filtration in this place at all. And you learn a lot of lessons along the way in this sport. But you look back for all he accomplished with the world records and Olympic medals, and I saw him in this little little place in Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I want to go back and talk about the history, but in terms of the history of swimming, you've just written a book, and congratulations on that. I mean, it's not your first though, is it?
This is number 5.
Number 5. Wow. That's incredible. But this one's called Below the Surface, the history of competitive swimming. So what's the background on this? Why did you go in this direction?
So the idea, Roman and Littlefield's the publisher, and early on they had me do a piece that was the top 100 swimmers ranked. We did something
I was going to bring that up, by the way. The top 100 swimmers ranked. I was flicking through it, and I got to tell you, I don't know how accurate it is. I didn't see my name in the top 100. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on.
The other thing is, I'm questioning myself on every single ranking because, man, what matters to me doesn't necessarily matter to somebody else too. That was a hell of a project to try.
Exactly. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, all good. So I did that one. We did a second edition of that. We did a book that was the top Olympic moments. And so as we started moving, and then we had another one that served more as an encyclopedia type of book. And so I talked to the acquisition editors over there, and I said, what we haven't done is a complete a look at the sport where it talks about the legends, it talks about controversies, the element of doping, rivalries. Where can we let's put something together where we can look at all these subtopics and let's put them into one book. And that's where this one came from. And it was by far the most difficult of the books to write, but it was also the most satisfying. I'm like a history nerd when it comes to the sport, and from going from not knowing a single thing to having fun with the research of it is, for me, it was fun to really dig back and look at all that stuff.
How did you come up with the subcategories, and was there any that missed out on the book?
So there weren't any that missed out, but what happened was there were some chapters that had to get cut, and I'm trying to think. It's funny. The book's a 2.5-year process, and I'm trying to think what made the cut and what ended up getting eliminated, which then I can use for other material. But basically, I wanted to look at just the main themes in the sport, and obviously, rivalries is a major theme, especially in a sport where you have such great rivalries between countries, between individuals. The whole doping element, because of stories like Michelle Smith, the East German program, and then to be able to then recognize the top coaches and athletes. It just seemed like, let me pick these. I think it was 8 specific themes that struck. Diversity at the end was one where I was able to focus on, what like somebody like Colin Jones has done, somebody like Enith Brigitha, who was a Dutch swimmer in the 70s, who gets no credit whatsoever, but she broke barriers as the first Black woman to medal at Worlds and the Olympic Games. And so it was just important to focus on specific topics that had a real strong presence in the sport.
Now, before we go on, where can we find the book? Where can people get it? And when's it out? When's it out?
So the nice thing is that, they delivered my copies. So now if you orders on Amazon are being processed, you can go through Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere that sells books. And Roman and Littlefield is the publisher. You can order directly from there. And it's available hardcover or ebook.
How many pages is it?
I think we're about 310.
Okay. I can manage that then.
Yeah, we're about a little more than 300. And then, what's that?
Is there pictures in there?
Yeah, and that's what Peter Bick, who's been the photographer for Swimming World for, at least since I've been there. He's helped me with every one of these projects, just donating pictures, and he sent a bunch of stuff that he's had through the years, from photos that he had of Matt Biondi from when he was shooting him at the IU Nat during Olympic trials, and so that spices up a little bit of the pages upon pages of my writing with a Peter picture thrown in there. Is you got
the book in front of you?
Yeah, I have it here.
Just hold it up so we gotta look at it. See what the cover looks like. There it is.
So that's obviously
Beautiful.
That's Michael there. And they did a nice job with the cover. So
right, that's awesome. Beautiful.
Thanks.
So in terms of the research, where were you looking for information?
So lots of interviews that I've had through the years, contacts and interviewing a lot of people from stuff that was pre-me. Sports Illustrated used to do an amazing job covering every single NCAAs, nationals, AAU championships. They would send writers to Australia frequently to do features. So there's a lot of the stuff from the 60s, like Don Scholander stuff, and 70s, definitely comes from me digging through SI's archives. A lot of New York Times stuff that was helpful. So definitely working off the shoulders of people who put in the time before me.
Awesome. I love it. Well, what did you discover about the Australia-USA rivalry that is of interest?
The one thing that I think strikes me that Australia doesn't get enough credit for, and occasionally it comes up, is if you take the two populations, just the richness that Australia has with what, about 20 million people versus 350 million here. It's spectacular, the talent that's produced in Australia. And when you break down the numbers and you go mathematically with it, it really is unbelievable. And I think I do think there's a respect factor. I think one of the most misunderstood stories is the 400 free relay from when Australia won on home soil there in 2000. Gary Hall, stoked the fire a little bit, and obviously people look for bulletin board fodder. Gary was trying to tip the cap to Australia and what that country is able to do, but then they took a snippet out of that full quote that says "smash them like guitars." Well, I would do the same thing if I was the coach too, or if I was as a newspaper writer. It's what you're doing. But I do think there's a definite respect level. But I think from my personal standpoint, I have a huge respect for. I would love to go and with family and everything, it's not doable. I would love to go and just spend a few months to do a book on Australian swimming.
Oh man. I'll tell you what. Yeah, that would be fantastic. It would. The history of Australian swimming is deep, just like the US, and they're passionate, man. It's funny, as we're sitting here chatting, you've got a book coming out called Below the Surface. I'm part of a documentary called Head Above Water, which came out today in Australia. It comes out tomorrow in the US on Amazon Prime. And Kieran Perkins just sent me a message and said congratulations, and bunch of other guys, Ian Thorpe and Michael Clement, chatting. I'm on a little group chat right now, so yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, the history of Australian swimming, man. Oh my god!
I mean, if you go back just 1912, the first gold medalist in female Olympic swimming, Fanny Durack, is Australian. Then you go through that 1500 phase of Murray Rose and John Conrad's, and it's just spectacular. I mean, the Dawn Fraser obviously being the first three-peat Olympic champion in any event. It just goes on and on.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I was very lucky to grow up in a country that just loves swimming. It was just in our blood. To be a swimmer was held in such high regard, and that was probably one of the reasons why I never quit swimming, is because it was like revered. If you were a swimmer, you were admired, And so if I had something in my life, finally, like I wasn't very good at anything else. I was just average at everything. But swimming, I was decent at it, and people looked up to me. I'd have a little, article in the newspaper like you did with Brendan Hansen, and you clip it out, and people in the community would talk about you. It was just something of pride,
Right.
And then to finally, be part of these, classic Australian teams in 2000, 2004. I've been very fortunate, like you. I'm passionate about swimming, man. I love it. I'm a nerd in that sense. Haven't written any books, but I love the podcast.
Brett, I tell you what, the one person who just has been awesome to talk to about it, and he's working for us at Swimming World now, but Ian Hansen. I mean, to talk to Hanso, and to have him, he oozes that pride as someone who used to be in the newspaper business and then went on and was a PR guy with Swimming Australia. He's taught me a lot about the love that the country has and how much passion people there have for what the swimmers accomplish. I mean, the fact that Swimming Australia is about to have its Australian trials on Amazon, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Oh, it's awesome. Look, honestly, back in 2000, when we had the Olympics and swimming was kind of at its height, we experienced things like that, and it kind of disappeared over the past 10 years. Kind of swimming went on the back burner a little bit in Australia, but it's good to see it back now. They've got some champions, and they got some contenders. And they're back to being a very strong, respected team again. They got great coaches. They've always had that, and they've got pride. So it's going to be super interesting to see how things shake out in Tokyo. Listen, man, look, the book itself, I'm really happy for you. I hope it sells 1 million copies. I'm going to pump it out there. I'm going to get it out there. But what else about the book? That any other surprises and any other things of interest in there?
As I page through it, and I like to be caught off guard. That's actually probably a good thing. Yeah, what was one that was really interesting was the Rick DeMont story.
Yeah.
That has a whole chapter in here, and Rick DeMont at the time was this is the 72 Olympics, and he's a 16-year-old kid who did everything right by filling in, the proper protocols of what he was taking for asthma, and the adults let him down, and then he was brought, he goes and wins this 400 freestyle, and then they find some traces of medication from his asthma, and he's brought and basically thrown into like a lion's den, or thrown to the wolves, in front of an IOC committee that was just not going to let him go. And years later they admitted some errors, but as I'm researching that story, that was a heartbreaking story, because he was, like I said, he was a 16-year-old kid. And so that was an interesting one. I think the Michelle Smith doping story, where Ireland, they refused to look at the progression she was making. There were a handful of individuals, but I mean the officials, the suits, they refused to say, hey, something's amiss here. I mean, you don't go from being someone who's bounced easily out of the prelims to winning that many medals in the Atlanta Olympics at that age. It just doesn't happen. And they pointed fingers saying everybody's jealous and this and that. And it's just, I think a lot of the details from the research were interesting. And like I said, I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy just learning.
Yeah, I agree. I remember watching her and thinking to myself, this is not right. I mean, something's wrong here. And, if you have a swimming eye, you can kind of pick those things up. But, you spot those things from time to time. And I still think, there's issues these days,
Yep.
We still haven't got a final ruling on Sun Yang, have we? I mean, I think he just went to trial for the second time.
Yeah. So they're saying that the ruling will come by the end of June.
Of course it will.
And because China's opened the door that if for some reason the Court of Arbitration for Sport finds him not guilty this time around, they'll slot him right into that 2 and 400, and probably the 8 too, to be honest.
No doubt. No doubt at all.
Whether that happens, I don't know, because this time around the case was behind closed doors. Well, first of all, it was virtually done, and then it was closed to the public, where the first one, which was a circus, and then they had all sorts of technical issues, was public. If basically everything is laid out the same way and there's no new evidence and data, I don't see how the CAS can reverse the decision. But we've been shocked by verdicts before, so that would be something else going to Tokyo if he ends up on deck racing.
Yeah, absolutely, that would be a shocker. But we had kind of the same situation in 16 with Russia.
True.
We had those athletes jumping in last minute, and that was wild too. But I don't
think we've seen anything like from the Duncan Scott, Matt Horton podium protest from Guangzhou from the Worlds. If for some reason Sun Yang competes in the Olympics, we haven't seen anything yet in terms of protesting his presence.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That'll look minor.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Especially if he finds his way onto the podium too. So,
absolutely.
Jeez. Well, what about the state of US swimming? Where do you think we are? I mean, it's so hard to kind of get a feel for. We're only days away from the trials, and we're probably going to release this podcast, a couple of days before the second wave, and where all the top athletes are competing. Where are we at, you think?
This is definitely so much more difficult to forecast and to predict than 16, 12, 8.4, the last ones I've been to, because you don't have this this typical preparation track to go by like we've had in the past. What I will say is the one thing that the United States has always done, and here we go again, the young kids are showing the young girls, I should say. I mean, we've got this Claire Curzan, 16-year-old who could go to Tokyo as the favorite in the 100 fly. I mean, she's been 56.20. I think we're going to see 55 in Omaha from her. World record's 55 mid. So, right there. But every time around, whether it was, Amanda Beard back in the day, Megan Kwan at one point, and I'm only picking a few, Katie Ledecky in 2012. There's always some of those young teen girls who come crushing through. What's that?
Missy Franklin.
And the thing that's interesting this time is that kids like Curzan and Tori Husk, who has a great chance, they probably weren't ready last year. And so in a way, and I don't mean this to sound flippant or anything, but the pandemic played to their favor. You know what I mean? I don't mean that sounds off, but having
listen, I agree with you, man. I think that's the case for some guys too. I honestly think it's the case for Michael Andrew, to be honest.
Oh, I think you're absolutely on target on that one, because he's found his way here. Yeah, and he wasn't where he needed to be last year. You're right. No. And then on the reverse side of that, a guy like Lochte who's hanging on. Veterans like Adrian and Grievers. Where does that extra year, what does that year do to them in terms of being able to make that one final hurrah? So it's definitely added an underlying current to the whole trials this extra year.
Let's talk about Michael again, just briefly before we move on to someone else. There's so much opinion about him, and so many comments. And look, I've had him on my podcast, and I've told him this. I had an opinion based on what everybody else was saying until I actually met him at the Mare Nostrum tour in 18, I believe. We went to Mare Nostrum. It was the first time that his parents weren't with him. He was traveling by himself, and we were touring around Europe. And man, this guy was so put together. He was just a great kid. He was doing everything he needed to do. He was smiling. He was the best teammate in terms of just being part of the group that was traveling. And then he would compete as hard as anybody. But he'd shake your hand at the end and he'd smile and he'd congratulate you. Just like you couldn't find anything wrong with this kid because he competed hard. But then he would be on the other side. So, like, I have nothing bad to say about him. I think he's fantastic.
And you know what, Brett? That says a lot about his character, because for someone who was thrust into the spotlight the way he was at 14 years old and told then, or, sees this whole internet universe and comments every which direction, the fact that he stayed grounded, that he carries himself in that way, tells you a ton about his character. Yeah. And that's impressive in itself, that he didn't get caught up in so mom and dad did something right, or he's just wired perfectly. It's a testament to him that he's gone from being thrust into that spotlight that hard and that quickly, that he can kind of carry himself in such a professional and classy way.
Well, the thing on him was he will never be an Olympian, he'll never make the Olympics. Well, now we're in a situation where, he certainly could make it in the 100 breaststroke. I mean, his 100 breaststroke a couple of weeks ago was fantastic, hitting a couple of 58s. He's been training for the 200 IM, and then he's got the 50 free at the end of the program. So he's got chances. So where do you see his best chance being?
Well, before he went to 58.6, I was thinking in the breaststroke, I thought we were looking at the 50 free was probably his best chance, even though there's really only one spot available there. Let's face it. After Caeleb, it's a dogfight for one spot. Yeah. Then he drops the 58.6, and that was big because that's given him some cushion between what we've seen elsewhere around the United States now. So I would say the 100 breast is his best shot, but then he also hits a 156 high 2 medley.
Yeah.
The one question I can't figure out right now is, what version of Chase Kalish are we going to see at trials? Because if he's anything like he was 2017 Worlds, if he can get back, then it's Chase's world in the medley in the United States. And then for Michael, it comes down to he's going to have the lead at the 150. There's no other way around it. He's going to, and it's not going to be a little lead either. It's going to be a sizable advantage. And then the question is, can he keep together and put a strong enough freestyle leg together where these guys are going to be tracking him? And he's going to, but at the same time, he needs to go to those strengths, I think. I mean, he needs to blast those first 350s where he has that key advantage over everyone. So,
well, yeah, I think he's either going to be an Olympian before then or not, right? Is the 100 breast first?
100 breast is prelims and semis on day 1, and then day 2. So that's the other thing. He might have this free ticket by then.
Yeah.
Look, if he punches himself onto the team on night 2, look out. He might be able to make all 3 of those main events.
Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with that. For me, especially in the 50, knowing the 50, that's kind of my thing. Is like, I know there's a time that you have to hit. It's not whether you finish first or second. It's like, for me, and Anthony Irvin's in this conversation too. Is Anthony good enough to make the Olympic team again? I don't think Anthony's going to the Olympic trials to not be an Olympian. That's the way I feel about it. But
for all he's done, why would he go to be an also-ran? That's not his mentality.
No, that's not his mentality.
And I love how he's just flying under the radar.
Yeah. So, like, for me, there's times, and you've already mentioned the 58.6. I think Michael has to be there again. Yeah. There's no way he can be slower and be expected to make this Olympic team. He's got to be on that, and even for a cushion to be a few tenths faster. That would be ideal.
I think an American record probably will, because look, the 100 breast in the United States, if you look around now, it needs to take a step forward. Yeah. And that's going to mean an American record. So 58.3 for Michael seems, for what he did, doable.
Yeah.
What's your number on the 50 free, Brett?
My number for a guarantee spot is 21.3. That's a guarantee. Caeleb's going faster.
Right.
But for that second spot, I agree with you. First is nothing against anybody out there, but first is Caeleb's. He's just that good. So I imagine Caeleb's either going to be around the world record, under it or right around it, which is going to put him in that 20.21 flat range. He could be faster. He could be 20.7 and blow it away, but somewhere between 20.7 and 21.0, that's going to be Caeleb's range, I believe. And then you have the next best, which is that 21.3. That's your guarantee. If you're 21.5, 21.6, it's a crapshoot. It could be anyone's, and you don't want to be in that situation.
No, the one guy that I want to keep an eye on is the young kid from New Jersey, David Curtis, who he's been 21.7. He's gone to North Carolina State. He's only 18 years old. He's pure speed, and I think he could surprise some people here. And so if the time ends up not being 21.3 or 21.4, and the second spot is 21.5 range, you've got to. He could be right there.
I would be hesitant on that one, only because he's got to get through 3 rounds. You got to perform on number 3. Right. You got to get through 1 for sure. You got to get through 2 to get that top 8. And then you're either put yourself in a position on that second swim to have a ton of pressure or no pressure, where he's, if he's in lane 5 next to Caeleb, let's say,
that's a different story.
The spotlight's on him and he's got to perform again. Or if he's out in lane 2 or 7 and he rips one, all right, that's a different story. He could do that for sure. But But yeah, I'd be hesitant because he's got to get through those 3 rounds. Unless look, I got to see more from him. But he's up against some experienced athletes. You know, I'm not going to take anything away from those guys. You know,
right. And then Ryan Held earlier this year had a huge 50 free, already. So you figure he's going to be there. And that's the beauty part of U.S. trials is that medal contenders are going to get left home here. It's just an unbelievable thing. That women's 100 backstroke coming up is going to be as big as probably in all the trials I've been to. I can't believe what's going to get left at home. I mean, you could see conceivably three women under 58, and so one of them's not going to the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean that is a stacked event for sure.
That's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, and it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick your favorite too. You know, it's like
very much.
I mean, you got the world record holder who she's hard to go past, but again, she's young enough to say like, I mean, it's the first time, so it's like the spotlight is bam,
I'm on her, right?
Look, she's performed under that pressure before, so I'm not going to say that she's not good enough to do it. She's absolutely good enough to crush that field if she wanted to, but it's going to be a race. It's going to be fun. Well, what about Caeleb? Is he ready to take over the mantle of, Michael Phelps, let's say? Like, the US has had Michael since, really 2004, where he's been the guy and that's kind of held the team together and bumped that medal tally. Is Caeleb ready to take over that mantle, you think?
I think so, because with the exception of 2018 Pan Pacs, and he was coming off an injury there. If you look at the 17 and 19 Worlds, he was pretty much untouchable. He had the 50, 100 freestyle, 100 fly. He won them both. He's put together twice now on the global stage a triple in a night, because I think he had a double plus a mixed relay, where he doesn't seem flustered ever. He really does go with things. I know it was short course, but the way he performed in ISL action at the end of last year, in that bubble that they had going, there's nothing that seemingly he does wrong in the pool. So, and really, we haven't seen him do anything wrong anywhere. And I think it's his time. I'm curious to see how he approaches the 200 freestyle in Omaha. Does he I think he's going to go out there and put a prelim swim in. Does he look to go a 145 there and show his money and then let the coaches make a decision? Or does he maybe time trial it in camp? I think he's going to have to be part of that 800 free relay for the U.S. to have a shot, especially with Russia as good as they were at European, and they have, at their trials too, they have so many 145s now. Great Britain's right there with 2 guys in the 144s. Australia's going to be there. And so I think you need your hammer on that relay. And I think he's a kind of guy who can deliver like that. And let's face it, he's a Greg Troy guy. He can do a 200.
Oh, he can do a 200. Yeah,
he can do a 200.
yeah, he's a Greg Troy guy, and he's doing the work. And look, I know some people in that camp, and they've told me that he is training for the 200, and it's just a matter of, like you said, how much of it does he do? Does he do the 1 swim? Does he do the 3? Does he time trial? But at some point, I think that is an event that he's looking at being a factor in that relay for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, because he can be a guy who's a 4 relay. He's a 4 relay cog then for the U.S. because you have that mixed medley now. And that's to be able to say your country can rely on you in every relay. He needs that to be defined as an all-time great.
So what would that put him at? How many events does that give him? Does that give him 8, 7?
So, well, I'm assuming it would be 50, 100 free, 100 fly, plus the 4 relays.
Okay, right. 7.
Because I don't see him doing a 4th individual event. World-wise, he has when it's at World Championships, he can add the 50 fly to things.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
And that's where the 8 come from.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So okay. Yeah. Well, that's doable then. I mean, if he's done the 8 at Worlds and been successful, he can certainly do it at the Olympics.
Absolutely. Right.
And the US has the team to win all those relays. They have the numbers.
Yeah, and going back to Michael Andrew, the big thing with him was, look, he's still nowhere near Adam Peaty's abilities in the 100 breaststroke, but if he can get down to a 58 low, open 100, and then split 57.9, 57.8, that's taking Great Britain's trump card out of things. Right now, that's where Great Britain has this. Even though the U.S. has a massive edge with 100 backstroke, Petey is a game changer, obviously, and so Andrew on the 100 breast being able to be possibly a 58.3 guy in the individual 100 breast would be massive for the medley relay.
Yeah, for sure. That's what they need. And going back to Michael in terms of the 50 free,
yeah.
He's going to have to do his best time to get it. But look, I think that 21.3 is where the money's at. I think anyone that wants that second spot needs to hit that 1.3. I think he's certainly good enough, and I think, I think there's a number of guys that could be there. It's going to be a great race. I can't wait to watch that and call it. But So, is there any? Are there any people that you know of that could be the surprise, could be the shock of the trials?
Well, who's had a great prep is Emma Nordin, who's been training at Arizona State. She had terrific showings across the 2, 4, 8, and 1500 freestyles at one of the tier meets. I believe it was one of the tier meets where she was I think she was a 404 in the 400 free, and those spots behind Leah Smith's going to be there in the 400 free, but maybe she can bounce a spot in the 800 free, 1500 free. In the women, I really like Emma Weyant, a 400 IMer, to have a real good shot. That's an open event as well for the U.S. I'm trying to think on the guys' side, just off the top of my head here.
Let me ask you this: is Ledecky unbeatable at these trials?
Yep.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we're about to. I think you're going to see her with a huge summer, which could be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see her and Titmus go battle in the 400 free.
Yeah,
that'll be some fun stuff. And the really cool thing this time around is there's a little bit of overlap between the Australian trials and the U.S. trials. That's going to be fun at the end of the night to be able to digest. Okay, what have we seen from both these places? Plus, let's face it, there's going to be some eyes on times from competitors. Just gauging, okay, where are people at?
And the Aussie trials live on Amazon, man. That's going to be fun.
That's going to be awesome. Yeah.
Sweet. I love that. Yeah. On the guys' side, I think that 100 breast is just so hard to call, even though Michael's there, but there's just there's a bunch of guys that could pop, and
I mean, Cody Miller is going to be there. Nick Finks had a very nice a really nice tune-up season here, very consistent, and he's due for a drop. So that'll be there as well. And Andrew Wilson's always lurking and probably just doing what is necessary to put the work in right now, and we'll see what comes from him in Omaha. So I think one of the other events is the Michael Phelps. I mean, this is going to be the first time that a 200 fly at the Olympic Games will not have Michael Phelps since 1996.
Wow.
That's just hard to believe.
Strange.
And you have right now, you look around the world, there's Luca Urlando was going to be this next guy to contend and push for a medal in that event, and obviously has had some shoulder injury stuff to deal with. So that'll be a pretty open event to see who fills that void left by Michael. Trenton Julian, coming off of a very strong Cal season, is going to be in the mix there. So that's another storyline. For the first time in 25 years, you're not going to have Michael Phelps in a 2 fly for the U.S.
Wild, yeah. Does Lochte make this team?
I've kept going back and forth. If he's going to make the team, it's going to be in the 200 medley, and that's where it'll be. He looks. I mean, when he won nationals in, what was that, 19? He was carrying so much extra weight.
Yeah.
And he still managed to get I think he went a 157 high there. He's so stinking, he's so damn good over all 4 strokes that I wouldn't be shocked if he puts together a 155. if he doesn't, and I know this is taking the easy way out, if he doesn't, I'm not going to be shocked there either. But he's that guy who can put together 4 really good strokes there, and it might just add up to something in the 155s. The question is that enough? And again, I repeat back to what I said earlier. What Chase Kalish are we going to see, and what kind of finish is Michael Andrew going to have, and where's Carson Foster going to play into this? Because he's a future star. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, he is, sure. What about this? Who gets the 2 spot in the 100 fly for men?
Yeah, it's an open one too. Yeah, you got guys like Maxime Rooney floating around. We never got to see what Rooney could do really since he joined. His last NCAAs at Texas was taken. He had that tremendous showing at, I think it was Nationals, where he was 47 mid in the 100 free. He was 50.
He just moved to Texas, I think, like 5 weeks before or something.
Yeah, so now we're going to see where everything pays off. But he'll be a guy there. I think a lot of people are forgetting Jack Conger. That's a guy who could have an impact. It's Tom Shields. Tom Shields is a veteran. He's had some solid swims. So yeah, and again though, you're right. It's who's for that one spot.
Yeah,
Caeleb takes that. Caeleb takes that any leeway out of there, because one of them is pretty much gobbled up.
The only question mark I have about Caeleb is, where is he in his preparation? Does Greg, Greg doesn't tend to bring his top swimmers all the way down, but this is an Olympic Games, and he has had some racing, so like he's raced, but it'll be interesting to see how far off his best he is without being far enough off where somebody could beat him, Yeah.
What kind of wiggle room do you leave for Tokyo, right? What kind of just enough to be able to bring it down again.
Exactly. Yeah.
when you need to, but without playing, without really risking a total disaster.
Exactly.
By not being prepared enough. You got to get there first. I think in a way, someone who like Simone Manuel. I don't think Simone has any problems in the 100 free, but all of a sudden there's a little more speed in that women's 50. You've got Curzan at 24.17. You have Husk at 24.2, and there's some speed coming. So she's going to have to be probably on a little bit more than maybe they want, just to make sure that you get that spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's it. And that's the game right now. All the coaches are playing, especially with the top athletes, because you can be caught in a funk too. That funk is just like, I just don't feel good right now. I haven't rested enough, or, whatever.
And then this is the one thing where, the US and Australia, the margin for error for them is minimal to non-existent. Where, if you're named to a team like happens at many of these countries, the pressure's off, and you have to, at the same time. I love how David Marsh, and you've probably heard him say this, that it's iron sharpening iron is what he's saying. The fact that you have to be so ready at U.S. trials only sharpens you for what's going to happen at the Olympic Games, rather than maybe a place where you're nominated to the team without having to go through the gauntlet.
Oh, for sure. I always thought it was a great strategic move for the US to have their trials. And look, some people argue, but from my point of view, have their trials, a month out, 5 weeks out, and then go to the games, just with that confidence of like, hey, I'm fast. For us back in the day, it was always like this 5-month window. You'd go to trials, and then you'd have a whole nother preparation. And we would go through the winter, because it's winter down in Australia, summer here. But so you go
both of your games, Brett, you were March trials, right? For both of your games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. March trials, and then you'd compete in August. And so it was like a whole preparation you had to go through again. So by the time I got to the games, I had all these doubts again. And I'd just gone through winter, so I hadn't had that racing. And so I just had doubts. And so, look, the Australians have moved it now to like we see, to the US, the same. And I think that just it enables them to walk into the games with confidence, knowing that we went head-to-head here 4 weeks ago. This is where we're at. We're going to walk in. We're going to go head-to-head again, So I think it just adds for faster swimming. It's been intriguing to see fast swimming all around the world, man. You know, with the restrictions. You know, I had some athletes that I was coaching out in California, and the restrictions that we were dealing with were insane. It was just crazy, you know, laughable if I think back to some of the situations we had to deal with the last 12 months. And that's been every swim team. And yet here we are seeing, you know, meet after meet where kids are just flying. And I don't think it's going to be any different at the trials, man. It's going to be a fast trials.
It's going to be terrific. And I love that Omaha venue. You know, now it's the 4th time it's going to be there. They know how to put on a heck of a show. Yeah, the crowd's going to be a little reduced compared to the past, but it's just a great atmosphere and environment. And I think the other thing that you may see some more speed by breaking it into wave 1 and wave 2. You know, and you've seen this, as opposed to having 1,400 or 1,500 people.
Yeah.
You know, now you're looking at about 6 to 7 heats of everything. You're not sitting around. You're not waiting. You're not playing that game of, okay, I've got X amount of hours, because that's how long some of those sessions were. I think that could play into some faster times.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a smart move. I think it's gonna mean real fast swimming. I think it's better for the athletes, and honestly, I think they should keep it for the future. To be quite honest, it should be that way.
I have a feeling this thing might, if this goes off well, that they might have found something here that really works.
Yeah, I think it's smart. I think it's really smart. It was getting ridiculous. Not to take anything away from the athletes that were there. It's just too long, man. It's
too long.
Too long, you know.
Especially on one of those prelim mornings was 3 200s. And when you're looking at 18 heats or whatever it was, it might have been 14, 15, 16 heats. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah, crazy. Well, listen, John, I've really appreciated this. Has been awesome, mate. Thanks for doing it. Great chat. The book is Below the Surface. Hold it up one more time so that people can check it out. Boom. This is the one. Go out and order it, please, everybody.
Brett, I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great. Let's catch up again soon, all right?
Definitely.
Thanks, John. Take care.
You too.